So I had originally had a video basically picked out for today. But then I realized, one, that it was September 11th, and two, in the past 2 years I had never actually posted a video on this day. So what I would kind of like to do today is just talk about September 11th. Talk about my own personal experiences, both the moment when it happened and even thinking on it now, 12 years later. So, September 11th, 2001, I was in 5th grade. And although I don't remember much from that day, I know that the very first time that I heard something about the attacks was when I was standing in the lunch line. It's interesting to me because I hear a lot of people talking about their first experience, and they talk about the teacher sitting the class down and showing them video and saying, this is what's happening right now. But if I'm going to be perfectly honest, I don't remember that happening for me personally. When I first heard it, it was very much like a rumor going around the school. Did you hear this? Did you hear that someone has flown planes into the World Trade Center? And when I first heard about it, I honestly thought that it was just a rumor, that it didn't actually happen. Or maybe deep down I knew that it actually happened, but I didn't want to believe that it had actually happened. And although I don't remember much, I think something must have happened during that day, from the moment when I heard it in the lunchroom to the moment when I was back home, that made me realize that it did actually happen. And I remember coming home that day and seeing my parents sitting in the living room looking at news reports. And I can't remember if any conversation happened between us when I got home. But I remember coming into the room, seeing them in the living room, and going downstairs into the family room to find another channel that wasn't talking about it. I just didn't want to hear about it. I think my young 10-year-old mind just didn't want to acknowledge the fact that this thing had actually happened, and I certainly didn't want to watch any news reports on it. And I distinctly remember being extremely frustrated as I'm going through channels, because it seems like every single channel that I go to is talking about these attacks. Then I finally find one. It's either Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network, I don't remember which one, that isn't talking about these attacks, and I watch that channel. I can't remember which channel it was, I can't remember what show was on at the time, but I latched on to that so that I wouldn't have to hear any of the actual events that was happening. And I think honestly it was just that I didn't want to acknowledge that it had happened. I wanted to continue to believe that something like this couldn't happen in my country. And it was only fairly recently, like in the past year or so, that I began actually looking at videos from the event and news reports from the event. It made me realize that little 10-year-old me didn't fully understand the scope of what these attacks did. Because this attack didn't just lose thousands of lives, though it certainly did that. It also made us lose our sense of security. There's one video in particular, and it's an amateur video of, I believe, a group of college students. And they're recording the World Trade Center from across some body of water, I can't tell you what it is right now, when that second plane hit the South Tower. And they immediately began worrying, is this just the beginning? Is more to come? Is this only going to get worse from this time forward? And it's that worry that was definitely pertinent right after the attacks. Now, I don't remember whether this was a year after or whether it was a couple years after, but one of those times I wrote an essay for the God, Flag, and Country speech. God, Flag, and Country, for those of you who don't know, is a contest where you can write an essay either based on God or on flag or on country or any combination of the three, and you say this speech and you can be nominated for awards and that kind of stuff. But I remember that I specifically wrote about country, and I specifically wrote about these attacks. And while I don't remember the exact words, I remember the gist of what I said near the very end. And it was basically just that these terrorists who attacked the World Trade Center tried to make us weaker. That was their intent. But instead of making us weaker, all it did was make us stronger. Make us realize that we're not completely and utterly safe, but that we can learn from this event and become a stronger nation because of it. And I still believe that to this day. It's been 12 years, but it's still very true. And if I could go back in time and say anything to my scared little 10-year-old self, it would be this. It's going to get better from this moment on. I know things look bleak now, and things look like they're never going to be the same again, and in many ways they're not. But things will get better. The nation will get stronger, it will rally around this fact, and I'm not going to say that hate's going to be completely gone in 12 years, because it's not. But it does get better. And trust me when I say, while this is a horrible tragedy, it is not the end of the world. And I don't really know what else to say about this event except don't forget. It's been 12 years, but it's as much a tragedy today as it was back then. Remember this attack. Remember all the lives lost and all the heroics that happened afterwards as people went into the rubble to see if they can find anybody still alive. And I'm not good at ending videos when it's not a serious subject, so I'm just going to go ahead and end it here. But I will see all of you tomorrow.